Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We're going to look today at complementary and supplementary angle equations. So this is different from what we did last week in that we were simply looking at complementary and supplementary angles. So we were talking about angles that add up to 90 degrees, so complementary, and angles that add up to 180 degrees, supplementary angles. So for example, if I was told one angle was 30 and they were complementary, the other angle would be 60 because 30 plus 60 adds up to 90. What we're going to look at today is a little more complex, and we're going to be dealing with equations, so we know that we're going to see equal signs here. So we have to remember that complementary angles add up and that are equal to 90, and supplementary angles add up and are equal to 180. What you're also going to remember is complementary angles made that right angle and supplementary angles made a straight line. So that's going to help us visually to tell the difference as well. So for our first question here, we're going to be asked to write an equation and to solve to find the missing angles. So we have two parts here, not just that we're going to write an equation, but we're going to solve to find the missing angles. So I want to know what's the actual measure of angle 1, not just that it's 2x minus 3, but what's the actual degree measurement. And for angle 2, not that it's x plus 3, but what's the actual degree measurement. So what I can do here is I can write an equation knowing that because these form a corner and because I see this little corner symbol here telling me that this is a 90-degree angle, that these are complementary. So I know that angle 1, which is 2x minus 3, plus angle 2, which is x plus 3, these must add up to 90 degrees because they are complementary because we see that right angle symbol. So what I can do here is I can solve this equation for x. So I've written my equation, now I'm ready to solve. We have to combine like terms here first. So I'm going to combine my 2x and my x, so that's 2x plus 1x, giving us 3x. And then what's going to happen here, we have a negative 3 plus 3, that's really plus 0. But we know, do we have to write plus 0? Is that going to change our value? It's not, so we don't have to write that. And then we're going to bring down that this is equal to 90. So now we have actually a really cute little one-step equation here. We know that that 3 is held on with multiplication to that x, so we can undo it with division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 leaves us with 1x, and that's going to give us x equals 9 divided by 3, giving us 30. Now, this is not saying x equals 30 degrees. What this is saying is that the value of x in x plus 3 or in 2x minus 3 is 30. So to find the actual degree measure, I now have to take this and substitute it back into my original expressions. So this angle here, instead of writing x plus 3, I'm going to write it as 30 plus 3. And so I get 33 degrees. For this angle here, instead of writing it as 2x minus 3, I'm going to write it as 2 times 30 minus 3. Sorry, wrong parentheses. I'm just writing parentheses around the substitution value, so just for the x. So now 2 times 3 giving us 60, minus 3 giving us 57 degrees. So the missing angles, angle 1 was 57 degrees, and angle 2 was 33 degrees. Now, what I love with a lot of equations, we can check our answers. So here we can also check. So for my check, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, do these two angles add up to 90 degrees? Does it make a complementary angle measurement? So 33 plus 57, is that equal to 90? Well, 33 plus 57 is in fact 90, so that does check out. Awesome. All right, for our next example here, we are asked once again to write an equation and to solve to find the missing angle. So we're doing the same idea here. Now this one's different because of the fact that we're given a straight line. So we know that these angle measurements are supplementary, and that means they add up to 180. Excellent. So we're going to do 3q plus 15q plus 18 equals 180. So we've written our equation. Now we're ready to combine like terms before we start solving. So 3q plus 15q is going to give us 18q. Bring down everything else. Now we're ready to solve. So what's happening to Q? First, it's getting multiplied by 18, then we're adding this 18. So we're going to undo that addition with subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides, and I get 18Q is equal to 162. Dividing by 18 here, I'm going to get Q equals 9. Now again, that is not giving us our angle measurement. That is just telling us that the value of Q is 9. So to find my angle measurements, I have to go back and substitute in. So instead of 3Q, I'm going to say 3 times 9, which is going to give us 27 degrees. Over here, instead of 15Q plus 18, I'm going to do 15 times 9 plus 18. Order of operations tells us to multiply first, so I'm going to do 15 times 9 to get 135, and then add on 18 to get 153 degrees. So my first angle measurement is 27 degrees. My second is 153 degrees. Again, I can check my answers by adding these two up, so 27 plus 153, and I'm hoping to see, because this is supplementary, that these add up to 180 degrees. Well, 27 plus 153 does in fact give us 180 degrees, so that checks out as well. All right, great job. So what we're seeing here, to summarize that up, is that to write and solve equations for missing angles, we can write and solve our equation based on whether it's complementary or supplementary. So for if it's a complementary angle or corner, we're going to do angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 90, and we can solve. For a supplementary or a straight line, we can do angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 180 and solve. Once we get a value for x, we then can just substitute that back in to our equation, substitute the answer of our equation, whatever we got from whether it's adding up to 90 or adding up to 180, into each angle's expression to determine the angle. So we have to make sure that we're not just finishing when we get x equals something, but then going back and answering the question as to what those angle measurements are. So let's try some examples here. All right, so here once again, we want to write an equation and solve to find the missing angles in the diagram below. So I see that I have this corner here, so I know that these two angles are complementary, and I know that they add up to 90. Great. So x plus 25 plus x will equal 90 degrees. Combining our like terms first in our equation, we're going to get 2x plus 25 equals 90. All right, so now we're ready to start solving. I'm going to subtract the constant. We're using those inverse operations here. 90 minus 25 giving us 65. And I divide to get x equals 32.5. Do not be alarmed by the fact that we got a decimal. That's totally okay. Decimals, fractions, they happen. So we can work with that. We can always use our calculators as well. And what's actually really nice about this question is that one of our angles is the measurement of x. So this angle right here is in fact going to be 32.5 degrees because it is x. Now my next one, I'm going to take 32.5 plus 25, and we're going to get an angle measurement of 57.5 degrees. Once again, we can check this by doing our two angle measurements added together. And this is complementary, so I want this to add up to 90 degrees. 57.5 plus 32.5 does in fact add up to 90 degrees. All right, so that one, we're good to go. All right, now we're going to do it again. So we want to write an equation and solve to find the missing angles in the diagram below. So here I'm seeing that I have this straight line. So I know that these two angles are supplementary, and as such, they will add up to 180. Awesome. So we're going to do 2x minus 6 plus x plus 1, and we're going to set that equal to 180. Now we're ready to solve. So first we're going to start combining like terms to get 3x minus 5. Watch those integer rules, who wins by how much. And then we're ready to start moving terms from one side to the other. So to undo that minus 5, we're going to add 5 to both sides. And then to undo that multiplication, we're going to divide both sides by 3. Now this is going to give us x equals, and if you type 185 divided by 3 onto your calculator, you're going to get 61.6 repeating. Now since I'm going to be substituting these values back in, I actually don't want to work with that repeating decimal because I can't type that in. So what I want to do is I want to turn that into a mixed number. So I'm going to write this as 61 and 2/3. So we know that that 0.6 repeating is the same as 2/3. So my first angle over here, I can do 61 and 2/3 plus 1 to get 62 and 2/3. Over here, I'm going to do 2 times 61 and 2/3 minus 6. We can multiply that to get 123 and 1/3 minus 6. We can always use our calculators for a lot of these. You can type those mixed numbers in, and we get 117 and 1/3. So we get our two angle measurements here. I'm putting my units of degrees to indicate that those are talking about the angles. So the 61 and 2/3, I'm not marking that with a degree symbol because it is not an angle. That's just my value of x, which I then use to plug back in or substitute to actually find our angle measurements. So the 62 and 2/3 is measurement, so I'm going to use the degree symbol, and the 117 and 1/3, also an angle measurement, so I use my degree symbol. All right, we have two more problems to practice with. So here, once again, I want to write an equation and solve to find the missing angles in the diagram. So this angle, I look at the shape here, I see that little corner, so I know that these angles are going to add up to 90 degrees. Excellent, they are complementary. So x minus 20 plus x equals 90. Very nice. Combining our like terms, be careful with those are 1x's. We get 2x minus 20 is equal to 90. All right, now we're ready to solve. So what's happening to x? It's being multiplied by 2, then we're subtracting 20. So to undo that, we're going to add 20 to both sides first. We get 2x is equal to 110. Solving for x, we're going to undo that multiplication with division, and we get x equals 55. Now, again, that's just our value of x. We want to find the angle measurements, so we're going to go back up into our diagram. One of our angles is actually x degrees, so this one will be 55 degrees. Our next one, we're going to do 55 minus 20, which is going to give us 35 degrees. So we have found our angle measurements. We can check this as well. 35 plus 55 does in fact give us 90 degrees. Ooh. All right, excellent. All right, and our last question here, we want to write an equation and solve to find the missing angles in the diagram below. So I look first to determine what type of angles they are. I see this straight line here, so I know that these two angles are supplementary and that they will add up to 180 degrees. Nice. So we're going to do 3x plus 25 plus 2x equals 180. So once we've written our equation, we're ready to combine our like terms to get 5x plus 25 is equal to 180. Now we have our nice little two-step equation we're ready to solve. We're going to subtract 25 on both sides to get 5x is equal to 155. This will divide very nicely to get us x equals 31. Now, that is again just my value for x. I need to go back into my angles to find out the actual degree measurement. So the first angle here is going to be 2 times 31, which is going to give us 62 degrees. For my next one, I'm going to do 3 times 31 plus 25. 3 times 31 is going to give us 93, and then adding that 25 gives us 118 degrees. So we've got our two angle measurements. One final check for us here that I'm going to see if 118 plus 62, if that will in fact equal 180 degrees, and it does. So 180 degrees equals 180 degrees. That checks out. We should be checking, so you can use your calculators to check as well, but you should definitely make sure that you're checking that you've answered the question, right? Not only did we write our equation and solve for x, but that we went back and found those angle measurements. So once we have our angle measurements, we can check that we've got the right angle measurements by verifying that, once again, they do add up to our correct angle measurement. So with both of these, we always want to make sure that we're paying attention to, is it a complementary angle or a supplementary angle? Complementary angles, we know, are going to make those corners and add up to 90 degrees. So we can set the sum of those two angles equal to 90 degrees. If it's supplementary, so it's a straight line, then we know that we're going to add those two angles up and set that equal to 180 degrees. Again, not just writing our equation, not just solving, but also going back and making sure that we've answered the question as to what are those two angle measurements. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this today.